Hey, good morning, guys. Happy Thursday. Doing a bit of a casual Thursday presentation and catching up on one that I have been wanting to do for um, maybe a couple weeks. And it is a review of Henry Ford's autobiography. So normally I have whatever physical book I'm talking about and I'll show it and show off the cover. But we're in the process of rearranging some things. And so that book has been packed away in a box. But rest assured, it is available on Amazon and it is a phenomenal book. So the first impression that I had was it popped up on a suggested like an Amazon suggestion when I was buying something else. Again, I find myself kind of purchasing things in batches. Like I was interested in money management and stocks, and I bought like four or five, six books on that subject all at once. And then I had a moment where I was like, I need to learn about the greats. I need to learn about uh, J.P. Morgan, the Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie. And as I was in that mode, Henry Ford came up as a suggestion. I thought, wow, that guy wrote an autobiography. Like, wow, he wrote down his own story. That's kind of crazy. Um, so that was the first thing, was a little bit surprising, just that someone of that level of achievement had had written down his own story, about 100 years ago. Thought, wow, that's kind of wild. And then the very first chapter, I had the thought of like, man, if this book came out today, it'd probably be a banned book. Like it'd probably be illegal, right? And the a little bit of tongue in cheek there, but it's he talks, the opening chapter is a little bit of kind of the merits of a industrial capitalistic society versus kind of a communist um, state run and organized economy, and compares it to the Soviet Union at the time. So it's just really interesting to see that contrast. And I was like, man, this is like crazy history and a perspective of a guy from that era. Um, so just super fascinating. And then, he walks us through his different ideologies um, on work and efficiency and money and charity and all these different things. So I found online a PDF version of the book, so I have it pulled up here on one of my computer screens, and like I normally do, just kind of a flip through um, to see some of the things that maybe jumped out. But he has his story and what I learned about business, starting the real business, secrets of manufacturing and service, getting into production, machines and men, the terror of the machine, wages, why not always have good business, how cheaply can things be made, money and goods, money, master or servant, why be poor, the tractor and power farming, why charity, railroads, things in general, democracy and industry, and what we may expect. So in the intro, like I said, I remember there was just some things jumping out at me where I was like, this dude is just making a statement on, how society should be. So I think that was fascinating. And let me just see if I can find, because I think there's like two places in the book where he talks about kind of his sort of pillars of business, if you will. I think those may be worth worth mentioning here, and then leaving us to it. And for an okay, so this is interesting. This is what his requirements were for the salespeople of his automobile. These were the 9 requirements for an agent. Number 1, a progressive, up to date man, keenly alive to the possibilities of business. Number 2, A suitable place of business, clean and dignified in appearance. 3, a stock of parts sufficient to make prompt replacements and keep in active service every Ford car in his territory. 4, an adequately equipped repair shop which has in it the right machinery for every necessary repair and adjustment. Number 5, mechanics who are thoroughly familiar with the construction and operation of Ford cars. Number 6, a comprehensive bookkeeping system and a follow-up sales system so that it may be instantly apparent what is the financial status of various departments of his business, the condition and size of his stock, and the present owners of cars, and the future prospects. 7, absolute cleanliness throughout every department. There must be no unwashed windows, dusty furniture, or dirty floors. 8, a suitable display sign. And 9, the adoption of policies which will ensure absolutely square dealing in the highest character of business ethics. And then he issued a general instruction. A dealer or a salesman ought to have the name of every possible automobile buyer in his territory, including those who have never given the matter a thought. He should then personally solicit by visitation, if possible, by correspondence at least, every man on the list, and then make necessary memoranda, know the automobile situation as related to every resident so solicited. If your territory is too large to permit this, you have too much territory. So, I mean, all that training and sales stuff I did, there you go, from the man himself. He has the requirements for what the automobile needed to have. So here's his principles of assembly. So this is interesting from like a manufacturing standpoint. Number 1, place the tools and the men in the sequence of the operation so that each component part shall travel the least possible distance while in the process of finishing. Number 2, use work slides or some other form of carrier so that when a workman completes his operation, he drops the part always in the same place, which must always be in the most convenient place to his hand, and if possible have gravity carry the part to the next workman for his operation. And number 3, use sliding assembly lines by which the parts to be assembled are delivered at convenient distances. Another fun fact was he ended up becoming good friends with Thomas Edison, which I thought that was fascinating. I didn't even realize Thomas Edison was alive at the same time. I think I mentally categorized him as like of the same era of like Isaac Newton or something like that, and I don't even know when Isaac Newton was alive, so like it's interesting. The more you learn, the less it seems like you know. Here's something super interesting. He has a year by year list of the price of their car and then how many cars they produced. So in 1909 to 1910, the price of the car was $950. They produced 18,000 cars. The very next year, they lowered their price to $780 and produced almost twice as many, 34,000 cars. Fast forward, 8-9 years later to 1918 to 1919, they had lowered their price all the way to $525, and they had produced 530,000. So that was a war year. They'd actually done more and sold it for less the couple of years before that. But by 1920 to 1921, they were selling the car for $440 to $355, and they produced 1,250,000. So in about 10, 11 years, he went from 18,000 to 1 million cars produced in a year. So, and lowered the price. basically every year except for a war year. So that is pretty wild, if I do say so myself. And he has, let me see if it's in here. And another, so kind of towards the end, because he talks about his friendship with Thomas Edison, and they used to do these like road trips around the country. And another gentleman that he befriended was a guy named John Burroughs, who was an outdoorsman that was very anti-industry. And Henry Ford actually converted him to liking the automobile because it showed him that rather than having to explore all these, get from place to place on foot or by other lesser means of travel, the automobile opened up a lot of opportunities to see the world. Okay, so I couldn't find, again, I thought he had some like tenets of business in here somewhere, but I couldn't find them, and it's all good. But I would say definitely check it out. And one, he makes a couple interesting points about like the division of labor and how it makes, life easier and the work easier for each individual worker and more prosperous. And so like kind of the whole notion of his philosophy was like provide products to the consumer at the lowest possible price, pay the highest possible wages, and still maintain a solid profit so that you can be profitable and grow and invest. But his idea, similar to Sam Walton, was like, let's take a small profit over 1 million cars as opposed to a large profit on a few hundred cars. So that was certainly his outlook there. He was not into the kind of planned obsolescence. Like he wanted to, they made the cars with the intention that you'd only need that one car for your whole life. Like that's the quality that they were trying to make it to. So that was something there. And then just the notion of, again, as I have become interested in automation and robotics and that side of manufacturing, there's a, I think, by his estimation, an incorrect pushback on certain technology. And it helped articulate, like, first off, one point that he makes is this machinery, it's not something that happens overnight. Like, it's not something that, you show up to work one day and you have a job doing something really dangerous or difficult, and then you show up the next day and you're laid off because they've replaced you with a robot or a machine. He talks about these systems in their case took decades to implement, but also it actually allowed people to do other more productive things. They were able to hire more people because they're producing more cars, and there becomes needs in the organization outside of that dirty or dangerous or monotonous task. So, and certainly today, if we think about how most cars are made, I had the chance to walk through BMW's factory maybe a month or so ago, and the amount of machines that are up there putting that car together, I don't think any of us are, feel cheated that we can't be up there welding those bodies together or doing parts of the assembly. And then there's an element of hey, the taxi driver, it was the evolution to the horse-drawn carriage driver, right? So the guys who were carting people around in horse-drawn carriages at the time that the automobile is coming out, they may have been thinking, oh, these automobiles are going to take our jobs. But looking back historically, that seems a little silly. It's, hey, of course we want cars, proliferated, if I can say that, and widespread so that people have access to it. And and then it just makes us all more efficient in our daily lives, and then new jobs get created, people find new ways to be productive. So it just helped me really solidify, like, hey, technological advancement is cannot be a negative thing. And then, the people trying to pitch that, they may have some alternative agenda. So there you go. That is my very long-winded review of Henry Ford's autobiography. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. It was funny. I posted it on LinkedIn, and I got a couple of good comments, interested comments, and one comment was of the kind of the woke um, uh, nature, in the sense that this person came in and only commented on, hey, Henry Ford was anti-Semitic. He had a thing against Jews, and he talks about Jewish people disparagingly in the book, blah, blah, blah. And it was funny because when I saw the comment, I thought, wow, it was such a small part of the book that I'd actually forgotten it even existed. And it's not worth commenting on this video, but it's interesting, because um, because the comment, I think it was inaccurate in saying that anytime he's talking about bankers or lawyers, he's actually referring to Jews and being disparaging. Well, I don't think that was the case, because he had legitimate criticisms of the way bankers and lawyers had taken over the train system and how they weren't running it as operational men. And he constantly said, "Hey, there's a need for bankers and lawyers. Like, they serve a function, but if they're not businessmen, they shouldn't be running businesses." That was his take on the matter, which I thought was interesting. And then he does have a very small portion, and it's a subsection, the end of one of these chapters, where he talks about, it's kind of a warning against the Jews and what the Jews are up to, and so, yeah, I mean, I guess if that is too, trigger warning, too difficult to get past, then sure, throw the baby out with the bathwater. But if you're able to put it in a historical context and understand that people had different biases at different times in history, and this was 100 years ago, and whatever, then I think that there's so much value in the book that that one little nugget of a peculiar historical thing is easy to look past from my perspective. And it's funny because I really try not to play this game, because I have a few of those cards that I can always play, like, I'm a hard woke target, because I can always say, well, hey, I have parents that are from grandparents that are from the Caribbean, or technically I'm of Jewish descent. um so, like, I could have easily said, "Oh, well, I'm Jewish, so therefore, yeah, I can't be offended or be offensive to Jews." But that just seems like a silly circular logic game, that has no place. It's it doesn't matter what I am. I'm a conscious, common sense human being, an adult, and so I don't have to have certain badges uh, in my heritage to say I'm allowed to have X, Y, or Z opinion. I think if you're Asian or white or black or whatever, you should be able to have any opinion and speak your mind in any way that you want to. So there you go. There's my long-winded explanation, even longer. But go check out the book. It's really fascinating for a bunch of different reasons, and I think you'll all enjoy. So have a good one. Talk to you soon.